I want, really, to read and understand you, but I keep falling asleep. You know that thing that I say in like every single book video, which is how not to drop my books? Christ alive, that's heavy. Oh my god, what? Look at that! I feel like, you know the bit in Cinderella with the little mice who like tried to grab all the cheese? I'm gonna break my back. Well, you know what, the books may as well, because nobody's son is doing it. Oh daughter, look at all the stuff I read. Yes! Why am I showing you like this? Has filmmaking degree, forgets she can do that. Hello and welcome to a very belated everything I read in 2022. Whee! Hello, if you're new and don't know who I am, my name is Emma. I'm a comparative literature graduate and a very soon to be filmmaking graduate. And I am dyslexic and I like books. Look how many books! There's so many books! I'm so proud of me! Oh my god! So in 2022 I read 12 books, 12 out of my Goodreads goal of 25. The year before, so in 2021, I think I read 19 books, which was painfully close I think to the 20 I wanted to read. But yeah, 2022 did not happen. Did not happen. 2022 is the year we did all the grad films. I was tired. Quite a lot of these were just nice to turn my brain off for. It is sometimes just nice to not have to think. We're going to start with a non-fiction that I read in 2022 that doesn't belong to a series. The first thing I finished in 2022, or the last thing I started in 2021, I read The Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Miranda Lowe. This is a lesbian relationship set in the 1950s in San Francisco, not Seattle, San Francisco, between an Asian American and very white American girl, and I think are they both teenagers? I think one of them is like 17 and I think the other one is 19. I can't really remember. Oh, unfortunately, one of the things I have to say about this, I thought it was a really different setting and like world to what I usually read, and especially, you guys know I've been very fussy about American literature. This was more of an issue looking to that because I believe Miranda Lowe as well is Chinese American, so like from that point of view it wasn't just this very white masculine world, which is I think a lot of my issue with American literature. So like that point of view was really interesting, and I really liked reading about San Francisco because I've never been, I don't know anything about it, and I don't think I've ever read any novel set there. So for me that was a lot of fun, but ultimately I wanted to like this more than I did. Stylistically it was fine. It does suck because sometimes if it's queer you're like, oh, I want to tell everybody to read it, that it's the most amazing thing ever. It was fine, it was so-so. I don't think it's horrible, and if you really want to read about San Francisco, if you really want to read more contemporary American stuff, especially queer things with underrepresented minorities, yeah, go for it. Absolutely. The other thing that makes this book more interesting is a commentary on like obviously the Chinese American experience, especially when like you're second or even third generation. But unfortunately I'm not really sure what else to say on that because I don't identify with it, so I don't know how good or accurate it was, and unfortunately didn't leave that much of an impression. It sucks because I wanted to like this more because of both the setting and the fact that it's queer, but ultimately this was just a bit meh. If you have more of an identification with the characters, their issues and their world, maybe you'll find this more interesting, but unfortunately for me I found it too removed to resonate, and then I don't think the book had much more to offer me. Really good novels can bridge that gap, whether you identify with the setting, time, whatever or not. It can engage you in the novel's world and really drawing empathy, and I didn't do it. It was just mediocre. It sucks to say, but I found it mediocre. Moving on now to a novel that I know you all know, I found anything but mediocre. Tessa Moshfegh's My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I did an entire video dedicated to this book. If you have not seen that, which is why I will not dwell on this long, this for me really was soul shattering. There's really no other way for me to describe it. I continue to think about it. I read this over the summer. When did I read this? In July? I keep thinking about this. I keep thinking about this again and again and again. I do things and then I go, huh. It's very My Year of Rest and Relaxation. And every time it's with a dark thought. If something more dark or more like damaging or dangerous pops up to do with like, I don't know, my weight or anything to do with mental health, like it's like this brought all of these things that you're not supposed to say and you're not supposed to admit that you feel and all that kind of stuff, all of the dark stuff and all of the things that you like can joke about to yourself but not to other people. It dredged it up so consciously to me that now I notice these things more than I have done, and I'm much more aware of them because, like I said in the video, it showed me this mirror and I was like, oh, well, that's not very flattering. And since then I've just come back to it so many times, even just to laugh at the line of book travel for 6'3" still makes me giggle. But yeah, this altered my brain chemistry. This one profoundly rocked me to my core, is one of the best things I have ever read, and is one of the best written things I have ever read, and will absolutely be a modern classic through and through. This is one I personally believe will absolutely stand the test of time. Have you ever heard me say that about a book? I do not say that often for a reason. This book is not everybody's piece of cake. It has polarising reactions. The thing is though, it's getting reactions. But yeah, no, in my opinion, this is fucking phenomenal. Genuinely. And I had a comment on that video recently. One of the things I had said was that I didn't think the like drug use was very... I haven't rewatched it, so I can't say if it was that I didn't say it was accurate or more that it didn't like resonate with me, but I've never had a drug problem or a dependency on a medication, so it would make sense that that wouldn't necessarily resonate with me. Someone left a comment saying that they had struggled with drug use. I can't remember if it meant like narcotics or I think it was prescription drugs, and they said that because of how obsessive the thinking gets, that you do know how much things will take to knock you out, or if you took a handful of this, mixed it with that, what that would do to you. I can't guarantee that comment is still there. Do go look for it, but it shifted my perspective on the novel, which I found interesting, and then also I was very grateful to realise I was lucky that that was something I didn't get, really. And I guess then that also pointed out to me how unlucky I am that I do resonate so deeply with this, because it is so much about pain, because it is so much about having awful mental health. So yeah, it sucks that I got that so deeply, but I guess I am very lucky that I did not identify or understand or resonate with any of the way that she uses medication, any of the way that she drugs herself out with meds. So if this book did not resonate deeply with you, consider yourself more than likely very lucky. But yeah. My Year of Rest and Relaxation is a story about a young woman who in the 2000s decides that after the death of her parents in close succession that she in fact does not want to deal with her life whatsoever, and decides for about a year she will sleep. So she drugs herself out for 3 days at a time, waking up only to eat, to poop, I believe to shower, and then drugging herself out to fall asleep again for 3 days. So she hibernates. That is her year of rest and relaxation, deciding she will awaken to the world after that year is up, deciding to recover then. This is the best portrayal of mental illness I have ever read. And yeah, sucks that I resonate with it. It's one of the best things I've ever read. I just don't think I've had anything shatter my soul quite so painfully. And that is why I love books. Or rather, literature. That one gets to be literature. It deserves to be part of the canon. Dead ass. Speaking of things that are part of the canon... Oh! I almost did drop it then, I got too cocky. Ladies and gentlemen, I finished Crime and Punishment! Oh god, ow, no! I tried to be dramatic and then I got a cramp in my thigh. I fell off my chair. I finished Crime and Punishment. I did it. It's one of the reasons this video is so fucking late. It's because I'd read 2/3 of it way back in the beginning of 2022 and then I just forgot about it. I don't know why I stopped reading this. I really don't know. I think maybe something else was just shiny and new and I wanted to read that instead. It happens. So I'd read 2/3 of it, so in January I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna fucking finish it. Fuck this fucking video, I need to finish this first. So I did finish it, so I read a third in January. So start to finish, I believe this took me an entire year to read, but that's not the point, because I finished it. Crime and Punishment is a novel by Dostoevsky set in 19th century Russia, and I thought it was fucking brilliant. I half read it for the fact that I get to be really smug about the fact that I've read Crime and Punishment, because do not get me wrong, I am so fucking smug that I have read Crime and Punishment. Oh my god, you haven't read Crime and Punishment? Fucking loose. yes, I absolutely read it for clout. But then also, the thing with classics, right? And when people are like, oh my god, that book is so good, it's, you know, it's a classic. Yeah, it's because it's fucking good. This is so good. It's long. Okay, this is 550 fucking pages. It's long, and it will not be to everybody's taste. It's set over like a month and a bit in a summery St. Petersburg. In a summery, and by summery I mean slightly disgusting St. Petersburg, where a former university student, Raskolnikov, this is a spoiler, commits a murder. But he does it really badly, and the chaos that ensues, and he just, like, you know, sucks at being a murderer. Like, dude fucking sucks at this. Like, if you've ever watched any true crime, this will drive you mad. Raskolnikov, he drives you mad because he's just so fucking stupid. It is mesmerising to see somebody so arrogant and so stupid at the same time. The amount of times I genuinely, I dead-ass threw this across the room because I was just getting angry with him. Like, he's so frustrating as a character. He's awful. He's absolutely awful. And that just makes it wonderful. It's this really poignant reminder of one of the big mistakes people often make when doing characters, especially protagonists, is you desperately want your audience to like the protagonist. This is a very important reminder that that is not the case whatsoever. You do not need your audience to like your main character. You create boring main characters when you do that. My god, Raskolnikov is so interesting, but I want to punch him in the face. And here, right, I'm not going to review this book in depth here, because I know you want a proper review, and then I will have to think about it properly, because if you're reviewing classics, I just want to make sure that I don't see anything stupid that goes out on the internet forever. But I will review separately. But I think you should just read Crime and Punishment, and then, like, put in the cast of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I want them to do an episode that is based on this, because the moment I thought of that, I could no longer unsee it. Dennis is Raskolnikov. Tell me I'm wrong. That's right, you can't, because it's true. Like, it's just so dead-ass true. This world that Dostoevsky makes is a very internal world. It is a very internal world of small spaces, ugly spaces, dilapidated spaces, spaces that feel musty and crusty and like you would just smell BO everywhere, but you would see rats running most places. It is a very internal world of very poor people in St. Petersburg in the 19th century. Not just a physical internal world, but also a mental, psychological internal world. So much of this novel is communications between two people in a room. It's a lot of the novel, but also in this internal psychological portrait of who Raskolnikov is and who he most importantly isn't, or rather who he thinks he is that he is not. That is where a lot of like how good this novel is in terms of the depth and complexity and unique voices he gives to every single one of his characters, because there are a lot of them in here. There are a lot of characters in this book and they all have like 5 names because Russians be Russianing. The whole thing with diminutives and nicknames and how do you get from Alexander to Sasha? I don't think there's anybody in this book called Alexander, but that's not the point. How do you get from Alexander to Sasha? Point is, the psychological profile that you get of each individual character, the unique voice of each individual character is... it's so good. It's so good. And for the fact that this is a crime novel, it's bloody excellent. Would you believe there is a crime in Crime and Punishment? Would you believe that? It's just really, really good. It is a bit tough at times, and you just kind of wish he would just shut the fuck up. And I did find this difficult as a dyslexic to follow, because I can follow really, really well, obviously when there's a lot of action and things move from place to place, because I can visualise. Often that's how I keep track of a story, by mapping the movement of places, spaces, all of that kind of stuff. That's often how I work with the book, with how much I can see. Lots of conversations in this. Lots and lots and lots of conversations in this. Lots of treaties on morality and all of that kind of good stuff that they just love cramming in here. Classics does that a lot. Treaties of moral whatchamacallits. I will do an entire video on this if you so would like. This was great. It is tough. It is not for everybody, but I'm going to be a dick about this and say that the enjoyment of this is certainly for the worthy, and you'll put the effort in to enjoy this, because it is really good. Kind of like in the way that War and Peace is very, very good, but you need to do the trial of the first 40 pages in order to basically be worthy of it. It's kind of what my mum said. What I'm reading now is I'm reading Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose. That's what I'm reading now. She said that after the first 100 pages it gets incredibly, incredibly good. So it's like once you tough it out for the first 100 pages, my mother's words, then you get rewarded with the rest of the book. There are points in Crime and Punishment where that feels very true, but don't be put off by that, because all in all, it's very, 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 very fucking good. And I'm honestly gassed to have read it. And when you finish it, you do very, very much understand why it is such a classic. Absolutely. Especially because I think that Dostoevsky captures those really little bits of what it is to be human. It's like he taps into, again, one of my favourite things to discuss, and I think that all novels should, is the human condition. So what I mean when I say that I don't identify with Last Night at the Telegraph Club is that I don't think I really, you know, in so many ways believed they were real. Whereas in My Year of Rest and Relaxation you can't do anything but believe she's real because you see these awful parts. And I think maybe that's the same in Crime and Punishment. A lot of it, because it feels very like human, very visceral. It does not matter that this book is set in 19th century Russia. It doesn't matter. I still saw parts of myself in some of those characters. No matter how different those characters are to me, I still saw parts of who I am reflected back at me from them. Last Night at the Telegraph didn't do that. My Year of Rest and Relaxation did. I think that's part of what makes things a classic. How they deserve their place in the literary canon and just makes them exceptional. I'm told I'm going to do that video on why you should read classics. This is a big reason why. Reflection of the human condition. Anyway, on to the non-fiction. Let's start with the very last thing I started reading at the end of 2022. This was Natasha Lunn's Conversations on Love. This is very, 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 very good. This is much, much better than I expected it to be. And it's not that I necessarily had low expectations, but this just exceeded my expectations through and through, which was such a nice change. Like, I'm always so worried about contemporary things disappointing me, because they often do. They've not naturally been selected, as time does to novels. But I really thought this was bloody brilliant. If there are any books in this, by the way, that you would like dedicated reviews to, fight it out in the comments. Fight it out in the comments. If you're loud enough, I shall listen to you. Natasha Lunn is a journalist, and what she does is she interviews writers, therapists, relationship experts. She interviews a wide variety and selection on people on love, and love in its various facets, forms, elements, and it was excellent. The concept as is just brilliant, but this book is also roughly divided into finding love, sustaining love, and losing love in the form of specifically loss and grief. And I did not expect that. I really thought this was going to be much more light-hearted and probably not that profound, but this really, really is. All of the different voices are so individual and they are so honest, and a lot of the time very, very painful. So this book is interwoven with Natasha Lunn's own experiences of getting in and out of relationships, of finding, you know, your person, and then also of having a miscarriage. That is essentially what arcs the entire book together, and I just think that it is very, very, very well done. It is done with so much empathy and understanding, and that really striving of connection and striving to understand, that curiosity. And I just think the fact that she interviewed such a wide range of people on such a wide range of things is brilliant. It's really, really brilliant, and I was very taken aback by it, almost because I thought it was going to be a little bit just a bit. I did pick this up because I thought it was Dolly Allison's book. I think I may have already said that. So I basically picked this up almost by mistake, shall we say. I initially also thought it was a collection of essays, but I think the interview structure, sort of themed interview structure, is a lot better, especially because it's like she guides you through everything. I cried a lot while reading this, which was unexpected, and I am grateful for the things it made me think about, and the way I was pushed to consider many different aspects and facets of love, which I don't usually. You guys may know if you've watched my channel for a long time, I hate how in the modern world we have very much degenerated the word love. How can you expect to encompass all of what it is in 4 fucking letters? Are you shitting me? I much prefer the Greeks' sort of take on it of having all of these kinds of love. The fact that we really only have romantic and platonic to describe love is very silly. We should use this concept and framework more. I think we would understand love a lot more if we used it by all of its names. Never ever underestimate the power of just having a word for something. It helps you see that it's there. It's like part of this theory that you can't distinguish 2 colours unless you have 2 names for the 2 different colours. For example, you know, the whole trope that men don't see as much colour as women do. It may also just be that women have learned a lot more names for different colours. So I can tell you an azure from a turquoise, from a navy, from a cobalt blue, because I have the words for them. If you don't know those words for them, you're just going to say blue. I think the same applies for love. And I really think it helps a lot about understanding yourself and understanding others. This book certainly makes me feel like it helped me understand others and myself a little bit more, and I have been recommending it to a lot of my friends. It's, again, not something I very often do. This one I think everybody could benefit from, and again, that is not something I say often about books, especially non-fiction, especially very contemporary non-fiction. I thought this was going to be really fluffy. This was surprisingly profound. Yeah, no, I really don't know what else to say apart from the fact that I was really impressed by this. This is one of those that I wish I'd thought of and done. I don't think I've ever said that. But yeah, absolutely excellent. Next up, what would be an Emma Everything I Read video if it was not for Dear Calvino? Of course I read some Calvino last year. I read his 6 memos for the next millennium, which seems appropriate because this is in fact the next millennium. This is based on a series of lectures that he gave. What are they called again? The Charles Eliot Norton Poetry Lectures. And because my ego is so amazingly huge, I now also want to one day give a Charles Eliot Norton Poetry Lecture. Remember, I'm creative and arrogant. I even wrote a list in the side going, what would my lectures be? One of them is Why Read the Classics.
Good evening. It is late. We're out with family friends, so I have drunk so much wine. And I still have somehow insisted that I must edit this. But I was thinking about the Charles Norton Eliot lectures, basically because that's what I do. That's what I think about when I'm drunk. I was going back through the list of who's given them, the people who've given them, because it's about poetry in its broader sense. So they've done a lot of composers, artists, poets, novelists, even film directors. So looking through the list and who's given them, and Calvino has done it, as you would know because this is the book I'm talking about. Calvino has done it, Umberto Eco has done it, Borges has done it, Varda has given them as well. It's it's the whole standing on the shoulders of greats thing. It's such a niche thing. This was one of these things that would end up being a credit, you know what I mean? But yeah, Harvard at me. Rewatching this sent me on a digression into buying a bunch more books. I read Umberto Eco's Name of the Rose, as I think I've just finished it. It's fucking excellent. It's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. The end of it, I was just like, what the fuck? It's gripped part of my soul and has got part of my brain in a chokehold. I'm not gonna lie to you. Eco has done them. His that I've just bought were 6 Walks in Fictional Woods, which is quite interesting because it both references Calvino and Rousseau, who wrote was it Reveries of a Solitary Walker, which is immediately where my brain went. And then I also bought a collection of Borges's work. In Name of the Rose, he does sort of reference, with one of his characters, he references Borges, and especially libraries and labyrinth, that is very much caught up in his work. So Eco is referencing him, and the thing I really love about Eco, in the same way that I love Calvino, is just this deep seated, rooted intertextuality, just by people who love literature. My favorite, and this is actually, you will find this if you think about the people who I love the most in terms of literature, not in terms of one-off texts, but in terms of literature as a whole. It is always the people who love literature the most, who love the classics, who are just, it's the kind of thing where the passion is so deeply embedded into everything that they do and write, everything they touch. These are the people that I love the most. You can feel it in Eco, you can feel the passion with Calvino, with Mitford. I mean, you can just feel the love of what they do. Defoe as well, but more of a like cheeky sense, especially without having like the same sort of like pedigree, I guess, literary pedigree like established. Montaigne as well, like you wouldn't write as much as he did on like innocuous subjects as he did if it wasn't that like deep rooted level of like passion and love for just the game. If you didn't. So yeah, I think that's why I'm thinking about this like Eliot Norton, like Charles Eliot Norton lectures, because like it's for love of what you do. And also I feel like I would qualify towards the end of my career as someone who could give one of these, you know. But obviously I was thinking about what I would do. I can't remember what I wrote in there, but why reading classics is certainly one of them. You should know history, literary history, film history, because everything, you know, if you're gonna make something good, you know, make something self, you know, referential and textuality. We love that kind of shit, right? But the things that I would like to write on, because I'm thinking about them now, are certainly like female rage. I'm writing basically an essay for a video essay on female rage, especially in cinema, which is really fascinating. The whole concept of that girl is an essay I'm writing on because I find it so interesting, how we're like brainwashing ourselves. Oh god, there's just so much that like, it's so much that I want to write about in just like an essay philosophical sense, but then also a lot of it's like thinking and feeling provides like almost, should we say, the philosophical framework and bedrock for the films I want to make. Because this like female rage one, I have a dark academia script that's built on this idea of like female rage, vengefulness, violence, like it's built on that. And then I have a different script, it's like a London girlies 20-something script, that is built on this bedrock of like trying to be that girl fitting into this perfect kind of, why is the word I want to use monolith? That's not what I want to use. But like this kind of like singularity of idea and identity of who, you know, a girl in her 20s should be. Not a woman, a girl in her 20s should be. These basic feature films I'm writing, how these two like stories and plots and characters are both built on this deep bedrock of like philosophizing ideas and essays that I really like, ideas that I just want to work through the intricacies of. These ideas as philosophical musings, shall we say, sort of spun into what, like essays, video essays, whatever. They are the bedrock of the fiction creative work that I want to build on top of them. This is at heart what it is. Yeah, I want to give lectures like this because I love the sound of my own voice, as we all know. But I don't know, I have so much to say on this, and you know, you've got to ride like young 20s, deeply passionate, not yet fully jaded view of the world. You've got to ride out that wave, right? So I think that's what me doing this is. I'm going to work on those, I'm going to work on them, and I will present to you my ideas, because I really want to write those movies, and like writing those, basically almost writing out the philosophical framework and theory, I guess, behind my own ideas is then what helps me get to like the heart of the plot with a lot of them, especially with like the dark academia, like female rage one that I'm writing, because oh man, I also don't want to be secretive about these ideas. Like, I want your help and I want your input. I find it just so fun. So here's a little one. If you've got this random video, first of all, look at you, love you. You get a gold star. Dark academia movie. What for you in that recipe? What do you need? What do you need from a dark academia movie? It's the one I'm focusing on the most right now because I had a good idea. I mean, the moment you think of like, you know, a secret, you know, bookcase that opens up into a door, you know, you get the ball rolling. But like, what do you need from a dark academia movie? Philosophically, practically, like aesthetically, tell me, what is it you want? But yes, Charles Eliot Norton lectures. One day, when I'm a grown-up, whenever that will be. This will continue to be an aspiration of mine, shall we just say.
The memos were on lightness, quickness, exactitude, visibility and multiplicity. And I'll be honest with you, I can't remember how much I remember of this, but I know that I enjoyed it, but not as much as other stuff. And I feel like it was one of those things that was easier to follow had you received it as a lecture. Because I think sometimes that flamboyancy of being able to verbally communicate, good God, oratory? Is that what I am? Is that what I do? I read it because it was short and it was Calvino, but not the best thing of his I've ever read, but I think that's also because These are lectures rather than things he has made with the intention of it being a written word. So considering Calvino, not his best, but certainly not bad. And I think there is a lot to still draw from it, especially just in the terms of like, don't need to be that serious. It's okay. You can just a bit more. And especially with what we write. Yeah. I don't remember very much of it. But maybe that one is just for the Calvino fangirls. But that's okay. Moving on to the last bit of non-fiction I read in 2022, The Sex Lives of African Women. My brother bought me this book as a Christmas present and I immediately read it. Because I just thought the concept was really fucking good. Not dissimilar to Conversations on Love, this is a collected series of interviews. This is by Nana Dokoa Sekiyama. I think I said that okay. But essentially what she does is she has collected, or she's done is collected voices from across Africa, but also the global dysphoria of African women, and just, you know, yeah, it sounds silly, but what their sex lives look like. It's so good in terms of its variety and this reminder there is no one way to do anything. There's no one way to have a relationship. There's no one way to have a sex life. There's no just one way to have sex. There are so many different variations, you know, and that's one of the very glorious things that makes us individuals. And also I guess a good reminder from my point of view being that if you only ever read things written by people who look like you, think like you, talk like you sit in an echo chamber if you do that. There is so much life out there. There are so many different ways of living and of being, and if you only look at people who look exactly like you, of course you're going to think there's only one way of doing things. The differences between us are some of the most interesting things about being human. Go and explore things. One of the fun ways of exploring things and other people's points of view and voices is through books and literature. I think it's bloody brilliant. And not only was this insightful, but it was also fucking funny. Like, a lot of these interviews are just, a lot of these women are just so entertaining. The way so many of them talk about sex, just like, it's hilarious. Thoroughly, thoroughly entertaining. And obviously because Africa is an enormous continent, and the African global dysphoria is so very, very large that the variety of voices in here is so interesting and so varied and so wide. That's just a really fascinating cross-section. This was really good. Yeah, my brother was the one who chose this. Yeah, no, it was a very, very good shout. Thank you, Louis. Very good shout. I'm sorry, some of the stories in there are just very, very funny. But also, again, it's lots of different countries in Africa have lots of different marital structures and relationship structures. And yeah, it's very, very interesting about like actually seeing into that and not just being like, oh, there are some countries where like men have multiple wives, and then actually reading some of these stories and some of these accounts that you actually get an individual's perspective of their own lives, of what their actual emotional experience of that situation is and how their day-to-day lives work. And you know, getting that cool thing, what's it called? I guess actually maybe the way to put it in part is that this book adds depth to a group of women who are very often caricatured and heavily sexualized and not seen as human beings, often seen as bodies. If you look, for example, about how the American medical system has treated black women's bodies historically and currently, you will see that there too. So yeah, adding the individual to a group of women that is often treated as bodies. All in all, it's a really, really good book. And it's just funny. Like, honestly, some of the women there are fucking funny. So yeah, really recommend. You guys know I'm going to continue banging my drum about reading people who are different to you. And every once in a while, I do remind you guys to have a look at your bookshelf and thoroughly and honestly assess what percentage of your books, what proportion of your books are written by cis-het white men. Because let me tell you, baby, there is a whole world out there. Whole world. So many voices. So many good, interesting voices that you don't need to hear the same middle-aged man over and over again. Because men are all the same, but that's not the point of this video. It is, however, very much past my bedtime. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna see you guys tomorrow morning. Or like right now, because editing. Anyway. How did I get here? Up next now, all the things I half read. Half read last year. It always happens. I swear it has nothing to do with my commitment issues. But sometimes you're reading a book and it's a good book and you like it and it's enjoyable, but then this cool, hot, exciting new book walks past and you just gotta get in there. So anyway, these are some of the books that I have read last year. I will finish these. I will come back and I will finish them, but there's other things that I want to read more, so I just, top of my pile of shame is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. I do really, really like this book. It's about like different systems of thinking. I do like it. I am really enjoying it. The only problem, right, is that it's obviously quite dry because it's more scientific. It just means that it takes a while to read. And last year I just wasn't in a place to read anything that required any real brain power, as you'll see later down this list. And this required energy and brain power. And I kept reading it when I was already tired, so I would read it before going to bed. And I would read 10 pages and fall asleep. And then I kept doing this. And I basically conditioned myself to fall asleep when I picked this up. And that is not a joke. I literally would start reading like a page or two and I would be out. I was asleep, I was gone. And I kept waking up the next morning with my alarm and then being like, why is this book in my bed? Why is it? Oh, I read 2 pages. And I also don't remember the 2 pages that I read. So back to square one we go. I think I've read 50 pages of this and it's so irritating to me because, okay, I read 50 pages of this. Like, I'm enjoying it. I find it interesting. Everything I've read so far has sunk into my brain. But I'm not getting very far with this, so I want really to read and understand you, but I keep falling asleep. If I'd added some smut, it would have been easier, but you know, come on. I want to finish you. Next on my half-read pile is Regretting Motherhood. I have read a little chunk of this and it's fun. I like it. Like, it's fun, I like it. I've made notes. I think it's interesting. I've seen a couple of comments about people giggling that my, you know, that my existential questioning of parenthood is almost canon on this channel now. It basically is. What video of the last 2 years would be complete without me wondering to parent or not to parent is, should you procreate? Should I procreate and create extra human beings? Which one of the reasons I wanted to read this, stress test the whole thing, because like, is it just head conditioning? Do I actually want to be a mother? Do I actually want to be a parent? Do I actually want to be a mother? I think I've figured out that I'd love to be a parent. The whole mother aspect of it is a bit more, which is why I started reading this, and I think for the same reason I abandoned that, this is, you know, if you're questioning that kind of stuff and if you're reading a scientific study, it is heavier. Your brain sometimes will just check out. It's harder to get through, it takes longer to digest, that's just the unfortunate reality. When you're reading smut, you can just, very easy to get through, as you will see later. The thing with this is a lot of emotionally difficult stuff, and then I think again, last year was tough, so my brain was like, can we please do something more fun? So yeah, I've got halfway through this. It is interesting and I do want to finish it, but one day. The other thing that I'm like halfway through, because I just keep picking it up and putting it down, is this Radical Guide for Women with ADHD. It's finally got diagnosed. Fun. This is a workbook, so it's less about me sitting down and reading this in one go and more again about doing more harder stuff, reflecting on the emotional side of having ADHD and, you know, having it been undiagnosed for 24 years. Like, how has that messed with me? And all those other good things. Recontextualizing who I am, my entire childhood, my entire teenage years, everything now through this new light. It's a lot. So this is helping, but again, it's hard, so sometimes you've got to put it down and come back to it. That's okay, I'll get through it eventually. It's just nice, but it's like for little checklists and little things and whatever to like read and tick off. But the thing with all 3 of these is that they're non-fiction and a lot of it is me trying to understand myself. One of them is about ADHD, the other about motherhood, and the other about just the human brain and understanding ourselves. And I think that's always difficult when you're trying to, you know, work on who you are, understand who you are. You can't just sit down and do that in one night. It does not surprise me that out of everything I was reading this year, these are the ones that I did not finish and get through. Like I said, Crime and Punishment was on top of this pile, but it was fiction, so it was so much easier to just read again. I didn't have to question the very soul and essence of who I am or who I would like to be in the future. So yeah, no wonder I got through that, and these ones are still patiently waiting for me. But anyway, they do deserve an honourable mention because I do find them very interesting and they're good, but they're just not bingeable. What a shock. Anyway, this video is now going to end here. Much to your horror, I'm sure, when I said, you know, books further down the list, you moved the cursor being like, but there's 3 minutes of this video left. I'm I'm splitting this list into 2 videos. I just make long ass videos, okay? I didn't talk about any of these books at any point last year to do a video where I just rattle them off. Nah, I'm not gonna leave you hanging like that. Stay tuned for that video. It's mainly fantasy and romance, but also it will have in my stats from 2022, my Goodreads stats, because we love it. We love data. Also, my reading goals for this year actually are, because I have shifted them because I find there's such a particular thread of what I read in 2022. So much of it was just reading things that have no weight to them just so that I could, they were very much about to just entertain, and that was it. And that is sometimes fine. That is sometimes what you need, but that is not really at heart what I want the most from the books that I read. So if you're curious in those goals, the book stats, and romance and fantasy, you can stay tuned for the next video. Thank you very, very much for watching. Like, subscribe and all that jazz, and I'll see you guys very, very soon.